Howdy! In this video, we will move beyond linear elastic fracture mechanics and enter the world of elastic plastic fracture mechanics, or EPFM. This is essential once plasticity at the crack tip is no longer negligible. Here is the roadmap for today. We will proceed in a few steps. First, we'll revisit the limitations of LEFM and identify when it breaks down. Second, we introduce the motivation for elastic plastic fracture mechanics. Third, we define the J integral and understand its physical meaning. Fourth, we discuss the very important concept of path independence. Finally, we introduce the cohesive zone concept, which gives us a physical picture of fracture. By the end of this video, you should understand why J is the natural extension of K. Let's begin with the question: when does LEFM stop working? Remember, LEFM relies on the assumption of small-scale yielding, meaning plasticity near the crack tip must be very limited. There are three common situations where this assumption fails. First, large plastic zones. If the plastic zone is no longer small compared to the crack length, the linear elastic solution becomes inaccurate. Second, high toughness materials. Ductile metals like aluminum and steel and many polymers develop significant plastic deformation before fracture. Third, high load levels. When the applied stress approaches the yield strength, plasticity spreads. The key message is that when small-scale yielding is violated, LEFM is no longer sufficient, and we need a new framework. This slide visualizes the difference. On the left, under small-scale yielding, the plastic zone is tiny compared with the crack length. Linear elasticity still dominates the surrounding field, so K works well. In the middle and on the right, under large-scale yielding, plasticity spreads significantly ahead of the crack tip. Now the stress and strain fields are strongly nonlinear. Once we enter large-scale yielding, linear elasticity no longer governs crack tip behavior. And this is exactly where EPFM becomes necessary. Let's pause for a moment and look at how fracture mechanics evolved. It began with Griffiths in 1921. He introduced the idea of an energy balance a crack grows when the energy release rate, G, reaches a critical value. Later, in the 1950s, Irwin reformulated fracture mechanics in terms of the crack tip stress field. He introduced the stress intensity factor K and showed that G is proportional to K squared. This was powerful because it linked energy and stress fields. But both G and K assume linear elasticity. So what happens when plasticity becomes significant? That question was answered by Jim Rice in 1968. He introduced the J integral, a nonlinear energy release rate that remains valid even when plastic deformation occurs at the crack tip. So technically, it is a journey from G to K to J. You can think of J as the natural extension of Griffith's idea into elastic plastic materials. And that is why we now enter elastic plastic fracture mechanics. Let's now define the J integral. At its core, J represents the energy release rate for nonlinear elastic plastic materials. Physically, it means energy available for crack growth per unit crack extension. Its unit is energy per area, typically joules per square meter. Now, mathematically, J is written as a contour integral. Gamma represents a contour, or simply a closed path surrounding the crack tip. You can imagine drawing a loop around the crack tip. That loop is gamma. And the remarkable thing is, no matter which loop you choose, as long as it encloses the crack tip, the value of J is the same. Next, let's understand what is inside the integral. Let's interpret the terms one by one. First term, W is the strain energy density. That means energy stored per unit volume in the material due to deformation. It includes both elastic and plastic portions, which you will see in the practice question at the end of the video. Now the second term involves Ti. It is the traction vector. So what does traction mean? Traction means force per unit area acting across a surface. Here's an intuitive way to understand it. Traction describes the actual force transmitted across a specific cut surface. If you imagine slicing the material with a plane, the traction vector tells you what force is being transmitted across that slice. Mathematically, T equal to the multiplication of the stress tensor sigma and the outward normal to the contour. So traction itself is a vector and depends on the stress tensor and the normal of the contour. The term du over dx is a displacement gradient. It describes how deformation varies in space. So when we multiply traction by deformation gradient, we are essentially describing the mechanical workflow. ds is the differential arc length along the contour. Now that we've seen the equation, let's step back and interpret what J really means. J is balancing two things: energy stored inside the contour minus mechanical work flowing across the contour. I will say that again. J is the energy stored inside the contour shown in the blue box, minus the mechanical work flowing across the contour shown in the green box. The result gives the net energy flowing into the crack tip. To understand this intuitively, imagine the crack tip as a sink. The contour gamma is an imaginary loop you draw around that sink. Energy flows through the material towards the crack tip. J measures how much energy flows into that loop and therefore into the crack tip per unit crack extension. In other words, J is the net mechanical energy flowing into the crack tip region after subtracting energy flowing out through the contour. That is why J is called a driving force. It quantifies how much energy is available to advance the crack. Here, let us discuss one of the most important properties of the J integral, path independence. What does path independence mean? It means that the value of J is the same no matter which contour we choose around the crack tip, such as gamma 1, gamma 2, or gamma 3, as long as certain conditions are satisfied. In other words, whether we take a small contour very close to the crack tip or a larger contour farther away, the computed J value should be identical. This is extremely powerful. It tells us that J is a true fracture parameter describing the crack tip driving force, not an artifact of our contour choice. You can think of the contour like a fence around the crack tip. Energy flows through the fence. If you move the fence outward or inward, the total energy flowing into the crack tip region is the same, so J does not change. Therefore, path independence is the magic that makes J a practical engineering tool. So far, we have discussed J from a theoretical standpoint, but in practice, we usually do not compute J from a contour integral in experiments. Instead, we determine J from low displacement measurements during fracture testing. To set up the experiment, we can use either the compact tension or single edge bend tests. More information will be provided in the next video. We will pre-crack the notched specimen via fatigue, load the specimen under displacement control, perform periodic partial unloading, and measure the load, displacement, and crack length. During each unloading segment, we measure the slope of the elastic unloading curve. This slope gives the elastic compliance of the specimen. Because compliance depends strongly on crack length, we can use calibrated relationships to convert elastic compliance to current crack length. So the unloading steps act like a built-in crack length gauge. The key idea of J integral is energy. Remember that J represents the energy release rate per unit crack extension per unit thickness. In an experiment, we can measure the work done by the external load, which is the area under the load displacement curve. Part of this work goes into elastic deformation, plastic deformation, and crack growth. What we want is the portion associated with crack advance. Experimentally, J can be decomposed into an elastic part and a plastic part. The plastic contribution comes from the plastic area under the load displacement curve. You will see more details in the practice question. Once we know J at each step and the corresponding crack length, we can plot the JR curve. The x-axis is the crack extension, and the y-axis is J. This curve tells us how the material resists crack growth. A large J value means the material has high fracture toughness. It requires more energy to drive crack growth. Finally, we extract the fracture toughness J1C. In practice, we fit the early portion of the JR curve, apply the ASTM construction line, and identify the intersection point. That intersection defines J1C, which is the critical driving force for crack initiation under elastic plastic conditions. Let's connect J back to what we learned earlier. One of the most important results in fracture mechanics is that in linear elastic materials, J equals G. In other words, when plasticity is negligible, the J integral reduces exactly to the energy release rate. So you can think of it this way. G works well for purely elastic behavior. K characterizes the elastic crack-tip field. J generalizes the energy concept to elastic plastic materials. This is why J is often viewed as the bridge between linear elastic fracture mechanics and elastic plastic fracture mechanics. So in practice, when should we use K and when should we use J? Here is the simple decision logic. Use K-based LEFM when the plastic zone is very small, small-scale yielding holds, and material behavior is mostly linear elastic. Typical examples are low-toughness metals such as tungsten and ceramics. Use J-based elastic plastic fracture mechanics when plasticity near the crack tip is significant and the material is ductile. Typical examples are many structural steels and ductile polymers. Here, we will just use one slide to introduce another powerful framework, the cohesive zone approach. The core idea is conceptually simple. Instead of treating the crack tip as mathematically singular, the cohesive zone model assumes that material ahead of the crack tip can still carry traction while it is progressively separating. In other words, the crack does not open instantly. There is a small fracture process zone where the two crack faces are still talking to each other through cohesive forces. You can think of it like this. Imagine two surfaces being pulled apart while connected by many tiny springs or adhesive bonds. As separation increases, those bonds gradually weaken and eventually fail. That traction-separation relationship is the heart of the cohesive zone model. This approach is very powerful because it naturally captures crack initiation, stable crack growth, large-scale plasticity effects, and material softening, all without requiring a stress singularity at the crack tip. This makes cohesive zone modeling especially useful for ductile fracture, polymers and adhesives, interfaces and delamination, and situations where LEFM assumptions break down. From a computational standpoint, cohesive zones play a major role in finite element analysis. During the FEA simulation, the elements initially carry load, then progressively soften and finally fail, allowing the crack to grow naturally. So in the modern workflow, J and K quantify crack driving force, while cohesive zone models explicitly simulate the fracture process. Let's quickly summarize the main messages from this lecture. J extends fracture mechanics into the elastic plastic regime. It represents the energy driving crack growth. J is path independent under appropriate conditions. Experimentally, J is obtained from low displacement and crack growth data, and cohesive zone models provide a physics-based way to simulate fracture in finite element analysis. If you remember one thing, K works well for brittle behavior. J is essential when plasticity matters. Let's walk through a short practice problem. We have a compact tension specimen tested in the elastic plastic regime. You are given thickness is 12 millimeters and initial ligament is 18 millimeters. The stress intensity factor is 45 megapascals square root meter. Young's modulus is 210 gigapascals. Sample is loaded in the plane strain condition. The plastic area under the low displacement curve is 4.5 newtons meter. The geometry factor is 2. The elastic and plastic J components can be calculated using the equations below. Here are the questions. A. Calculate J elastic. B. Calculate J plastic. C. Determine the total J. And D. Briefly state which contribution dominates. Pause here and give it a try. Here is the solution. To calculate the elastic component of J, we need to first calculate the effective modulus. New here is the Poisson ratio, which is 0.3. The effective modulus can be estimated to be 231 gigapascals. Next, using the equation given, we can calculate the elastic part of J, which is 8.76 kilojoules per square meter. Moving on to B. Plug in the given values in the equation. J, plastic, is about 41.7 kilojoules per square meter. Question C. The total energy is the elastic part plus the plastic part in J, which gives 50.5 kilojoules per square meter. Question D. Since the J plastic is much larger than J elastic, the plastic contribution dominates. If you like to explore fracture mechanics further, here is an excellent resource by Dr. Bob McGinty. Here is a second recommended resource called Mechanical. I will include the links in the video description. Finally, I would like to acknowledge support from the National Science Foundation and APA-E. Their support makes this educational effort possible. In the next video, we will take a lighter and more practical turn looking at typical fracture toughness values of common engineering materials and the standard testing methods used to measure them. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.